Hey everyone, welcome back to Liberal Breakdown. And today we're diving into what might be one of the most ridiculous and reckless trade moves Donald Trump has ever made. And yes, that's a high bar. So here's what's happening. Canada, under Prime Minister Mark Carney, just announced that it intends to recognize Palestinian statehood during the UN General Assembly this September, following France and the UK. This is a major symbolic step toward peace and dignity for Palestinians, and it signals that Western powers are finally taking international law seriously, or at least starting to. But of course, Trump responded the only way he knows how, with a tantrum disguised as policy.
Deadline day is fast approaching.
August 1st is a very big day for this country because money is going to pour into the United States like we've never seen before.
Donald Trump's ultimatum: cut a deal with the U.S. or face 35% tariffs starting Friday, a date Mark Carney seems willing to blow through.
Their constructive negotiations with the Americans are ongoing. It's possible that they may not conclude by the 1st of August.
Although the president didn't wait for Friday to bring in his latest tax, slapping a 50% tariff on semi-finished copper, which will impact $9.3 billion in copper exports Canada sends to the U.S. Tariffs that, like steel and aluminum, the Prime Minister thinks are here to stay.
I think we have to recognize that in the strategic sectors, again, as defined by the United States, what's strategic to them, that they have tariffs.
Another one of those sectors, dairy.
They've been charging our farmers 200%, 300%, 400% for years, and nobody did anything about it.
Except Trump did address that in 2018 with the Canada-Mexico-U.S. free trade deal.
On his favorite megaphone, Truth Social, he ranted that recognizing Palestine makes it very hard for the U.S. to make a trade deal with Canada. He's now threatening to slap 35% tariffs on all Canadian goods not covered by the USMCA, unless a deal is signed by August 1st. That's tomorrow. Trump is trying to punish a longtime ally, our closest trading partner, not because they violated any trade terms, but because they dared to support the basic idea that Palestinians deserve a state. That's it. That's the whole grievance. So here's a really important question someone asked, and I've been thinking about it too. Why is Trump threatening massive tariffs on Canada for recognizing Palestine, but not doing the same to the UK or France, who've made the exact same move? The answer? 2 words: leverage and optics. Canada is the largest buyer of U.S. goods in the world. That makes them economically vulnerable to trade threats, which Trump sees as an opportunity to look tough without real geopolitical risk. The UK not even in NAFTA. France, not enough direct economic leverage. But Canada, right across the border and tightly interwoven with our economy. And politically, it's easier for Trump to paint Canada, with a progressive prime minister and liberal policies, as some kind of woke traitor. That plays well with his base. He's not going to pull that same stunt with Sunak or Macron. Too messy, too far, too complicated. So no, it's not about fairness. It's about what Trump thinks he can get away with, and who he wants to punish to score culture war points. Classic. If this goes through, it could disrupt hundreds of billions in trade, affecting agriculture, auto manufacturing, consumer goods, you name it. We're talking about rising prices, layoffs, and supply chain shocks, all because Donald Trump thinks diplomacy should only work if it flatters his worldview. Canada took a principled stand, one that many in the global South have been begging for, and now they're getting economically blackmailed by the supposed leader of the free world. This is the same playbook we've seen with Trump time and time again: bully, isolate, retaliate. But here's the thing. The world is moving forward. The UK and France backed Palestine. Canada joined. Even Germany is debating it. The U.S., under Trump, is isolating itself not just from allies, but from the future. We can't allow international cooperation to be dictated by fragile egos. Recognizing Palestine isn't about being anti-Israel. It's about being pro-human rights. It's about finally acknowledging decades of occupation and inequality and stepping toward justice. If Trump wants to wreck our economy over that principle, then we have to ask, whose interests is he really protecting? Because it sure as hell isn't ours.
Trump back in April revealing his plan for reciprocal tariffs on countries around the world on what he called Liberation Day. In Washington today, lawyers will be defending a decision in May against those tariffs. Earlier this year, the U.S. Court of International Trade ruled against the White House and in favor of a group of small businesses that argued the president went outside his constitutional authority to declare national emergencies and impose the tariff. Our next guest joined the case after the Trump administration appealed. Let's bring in now attorney Neil Katyal. He's former acting Solicitor General of the United States and an MSNBC contributor. So, Neil, why don't we get right to it with, I'm sure, the arguments that the Trump administration is going to put out there. And the first one is on determining whether there's a national emergency or not because of trade deficits. That's a decision that should be made, a political decision that should be made by Congress and or the president, certainly not the judiciary. What do you say to that?
So thank you, Joe, for having me. And I'm about to go off and argue this case in court in a couple hours. And I want to be very respectful to the court. And so I'm not here to try and argue the case in front of you as much as to just outline for your viewers the issues in the case. And as you say, the president is saying he on his own, with his say-so, can impose these tariffs. And that is something no president in 200 years has ever thought. The tariff power, goes all the way back to the Revolutionary War and, the protests and the Boston Tea Party and the like. And our Constitution was very clear in saying, there's one branch that has the power to tariff, and it isn't the president and it isn't the courts. It's the Congress of the United States.
Under the U.S. Constitution, only Congress has the power to impose taxes and tariffs. Now, yes, Congress has passed laws over the years that delegate limited tariff authority to the executive branch. But those laws have very specific conditions, and most require actual investigations before action is taken. What Trump is trying to do now is stretch the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, IEEPA, to say, if a country does something I don't like diplomatically, that's an emergency, so I can tax them. Courts are like, nope. Where a court recently ruled that Trump overstepped his authority by using IEEPA to declare a national emergency just to justify trade sanctions.
Congress traditionally deferred in certain areas on tariffs to presidents in the past?
Nope, never. So Congress has always been zealously guarding of its authority. So even like, for example, take the Civil War, the Congress gave President Lincoln all sorts of powers, including the power to blockade and ban all products from the South. But the one thing they didn't do was grant him the tariff power. And that's because tariffs are something that our constitutional founders recognized, they're so tempting for kings and presidents to use. And so our founders said, we have to locate this power in a different branch, the branch that's closest to the people, the Congress. And specifically, they said, if you're raising revenue, you've got to originate that bill in the House of Representatives. None of that's happened here. And the way, Joe, we've always historically done things when presidents want to have some trade authority, want to do something, negotiate a deal, threaten a tariff or something, is they go to Congress in advance and get that approval. They don't just on their own just say, hey, I know what's best, and blow off the Congress.
The judge basically said you can't just cry emergency every time a country disagrees with you. That's not how law works. And this week, 7 new lawsuits were filed against Trump's latest tariffs on Canada, Brazil, and India. Even the U.S. Court of Appeals is questioning whether IEPA, which was created for national security crises, can legally be used to punish diplomatic moves like recognizing Palestine. Trump is trying to weaponize the economy against allies who don't fall in line, and he's ignoring the Constitution to do it. This is why we need strong courts and even stronger congressional oversight, because no president, red or blue, should have the power to wage economic war without checks. If you believe in democracy, in international diplomacy, and in actual rule of law, then this matters. Trump is trying to govern like a king, and the courts are finally saying, you're not. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.